Good evening. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Pittsboro Board of Commissioners, regular meeting for Monday, March the 13th, 2023. And I wish you would join me in a moment of silence. Commissioner Farrell, would you lead us in the pledge?
Would everyone rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the time in which we need to make a motion to either approve the agenda as stated or a motion to modify it. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to set the agenda as is.
Motion by Commissioner Farrell,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. I will not read the proclamation tonight for Women's History Month, but I do find it interesting that it was first proclaimed in 1980 and expanded into a full month-long celebration. But the first proclamation was by President Jimmy Carter, who, of course, our hearts and prayers go to as he faces the end of his life. And it is the theme this year is providing healing and promoting hope, which are things that I think women are particularly strong on. And so in celebration of March as Women's History Month, I'll ask if there is a motion to accept this resolution in your package.
Motion to accept the resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by James Vose, Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And next we have a proclamation declaring Arbor Day. I want you to know this is just the first part of our Arbor Day celebration. One of our Girl Scout troops helped last year, the last couple of years, in celebration of Arbor Day and helped plant trees out at Mary Hayes Holmes Park. And it is our hope that this year we will plant earlier, because last year we planted actually on the Arbor Day and it was too hot by the time all of that came to pass. And unfortunately, the tree is no more. So maybe we can plant 2 trees this year. So is there a motion to accept the resolution proclamation declaring March to be 17th to be Arbor Day?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Citizens Matters starts with the manager update. And I must tell you, Larry Faison, that I think it's just a little bit outrageous that you have your set of skis behind you in this picture, and that you are in, from what I understand, Banff or near Banff. You're not even in the country. You are quite far from the town of Pittsboro tonight. So might we have the manager's update? And I don't mean the ski report.
I'll dispense. Good evening, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. I'll dispense with the ski report. All I'll say, it was sad compared to what it was 2 weeks ago in another locale. But I have a very brief report for you this evening. First, can you all of you hear me satisfactorily?
Yes.
Good, thank you. The town has been contacted by Brightspeed regarding the addition of fiber in Pittsboro. Our role, just real high level, our role will include basically permitting and communications with the public. We're not involved directly with the construction of the fiber or managing that service once it comes to fruition. I asked Kent of our staff to form a work group of his department, Public Works, Planning, staff, and to begin reviewing the fiber project. And we'll integrate other staff as needed and appropriate, such as public information, police, downtown, Parks and Rec, Chatham County, and NCDOT. The staff has had an initial meeting on March 1st for orientation purposes, and we'll be reviewing the permitting of Brightspeed's construction of fiber in the town, which we anticipate will use some of the town's right-of-ways. The major points for your awareness include the installation is expected to begin in the fall of this year. The service will offer approximately 2 gigabytes of speed to homes initially, with 10 gigabytes expansion capable. The majority of the construction activity will use aerial installation on existing poles, approximately more than 60%. The gaps will be underground with no new poles expected. Some of the areas of interest as a staff is to deconflict the project corridor where the fiber will be laid for potential impacts with town utilities and infrastructure and facilities, and we'll be developing a mitigation plan to address that. Next is to establish and sustain contact with Brightspeed and its vendors that will be deploying the work. Third is to establish regular collaboration with Brightspeed and its vendors, and also to coordinate with Brightspeed regarding the communication plan to provide our citizens with awareness of the construction corridor, potential impacts, which we think would probably be limited to roadways for road work and maybe possible intermittent closures while the road is being traversed, and also the construction schedule. So Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners, that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, and enjoy Banff. Next is my comments and concerns, and I simply am going to say this evening that although I usually give a recitation of all the meetings I've been to on behalf of the town, I'm not going to do that tonight. We've been meeting very diligently with respect to our permanent town manager, and I think that is sufficient work to report on. And so I will then pass it on to Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin.
Thank you very much. I attended the Chatham County Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and we discussed funding, and there were 2 groups that we had chosen to fund, and those recommendations will be made to the Chatham County Board of Commissioners. The total funding is $200,000. The proposal was $50,000 for one group and $150,000 for the other. And the second thing is the Triangle J Council of Governments, and I attended that meeting, and what was discussed in that is a possible new name for Triangle J, change it from Triangle J to something new. They're talking about rebranding and also renovating the current location. At one time, Triangle J was planning to move, but there was a difficulty with the contract or with the building, the people who are currently in the building. So it was a decision made to renovate the current location. So that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Bonitz?
I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Commissioner Farrell?
I missed the PBA meeting Wednesday, but I think Teresa, if she has anything she attended, if she has anything she can offer that, but that's all I have.
Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner Shipp?
Sure. Just continuing to work on the merger and regionalization. We have our next meeting on Thursday of this week. I attended the AHAC meeting also, and we have an EDC meeting this Wednesday. So expecting some updates at that meeting. For concerns, the only one I really have is the downtown Pittsboro website. I know that individual website hasn't been back up since we transitioned that to the town. So I'd just like to see that resource available again, a website to highlight the businesses downtown.
Thank you. Commissioner Vose?
The Arts Council Fundraising Committee met on April 28th. On March 7th, I attended a Chamber of Commerce Executive Board meeting. And then on March 9th, I was able to attend the WRAL Big Night in Raleigh as a sponsor and a representative of the Chatham Arts Council.
And now we're at a point where we would have public comment. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed up for public comment? No? All right. Next on the agenda then is the consent agenda. The consent agenda lists 11 matters that need your attention. Is there a motion to do that in one fell swoop, or is there an amendment that would remove any of the items from the consent agenda to the other section of the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next on our agenda is a discussion of the Force Main project, and Kent Jackson will lead us in that endeavor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and board members. We've had quite a few discussions about this recently. So trying to recap and kind of bring us to, kind of a overview of kind of where we are with not only with the Force Main project, but with the several projects you've heard about related to regionalization and the merger. So starting with the Force Main, so we took the bids in November. We have somewhat graciously been extended consideration of those bids through May of this year. I did speak with the contractor, the low bidder, this week. He does have growing concerns about, what our ultimate choice will be. Some of those things, he has had one supplier that has rescinded their quote for a particular valve in this case. So that will come with a cost, with an additional cost that the low bidder is prepared to absorb, as has been their commitment. That also brings a lead time, because in the fashion these projects are bidded, the vendors kind of have holds, or they have pre-positioning for the materials, and then when those quotes are expired, they kind of have to go back in line, so to speak, as far as the delivery availability times. So for this particular valve part, the lead time now is 34 weeks. So that is a example, one item that, kind of highlights the, somewhat the peril with extending the bids for extended period of time. He did also comment about his growing concern about moving forward. They're, planning their work for the year. They are, each new bid opportunity that comes out, they are evaluating that a little bit with, this project in their scope. So anyways, however, as of today, our agreement with the contractor to continue hold unit prices through May 10th is still solid. However, there are some, near-term subsequent actions, because he didn't emphasize that at some point he will have to just walk away. So that's the update there. So just to remind, in order to enter a construction contract for this project, we have to, of course, fully fund the project cost, which are $42.5 million through the loans and principal forgiveness we have attained through the state. We have a current funding gap of $5.3 million. As you'll recall, Chatham Park Investors has offered a proposal to assist with completing that gap funding through a prepayment of fees that were already contemplated in the agreement that the town has with Chatham Park. At the same time, there's some conditions with that offer that are yet to be worked out, as we have talked about previously. So that is that part. As far as the merger is concerned, Sanford has mentioned more than one time that they place a significant value on being at the table, to vet or, participate in any negotiations related to the force main project, and also related to any revisions to our agreements with Chatham Park Investors for the project. So they have repeated that a number of times. Staff is largely, or we are completely in agreement with that. I mean, we recognize that ideally we would move forward with a comprehensive plan for not only the force main project, but also the work at the treatment plant, that part of that system, and also the water projects that are related to this regionalization effort. There, no doubt that, sorting out the full package of, approximately $211 million over the next 3 to 5 years is the ideal and best way to move forward. I'll say that, kind of notwithstanding that a little bit, Pittsboro we have a long-standing need for the additional wastewater capacity. And so that has to be thoughtfully considered, and that's what makes this so challenging. I think the ultimate solution, we have to balance that need for the additional capacity with the composition of the finance package, whether that be in a phased approach or whether that be in a kind of comprehensive one-time approach. I think, there's also additional community considerations. I mean, we know there's for some time, there've been a number of individual and corporate developments and projects, building activity that has been delayed or, kind of stymied by, the force main. Just reviewing a few of them. We have recently had a homeowner on Hillcrest Road come into our office with a failing septic system. And we don't have a really good solution to offer to that property owner. There's another property owner on Dark Oaks that has been talking with our office for probably 18 months. They want to build a retirement home, a 3-bedroom retirement home on a lot that they have owned for some time. We're aware of the Powell Place Hotel that has been planned and has gone through a kind of far, degree of review with the town. Also recently, Tom Roberts at Chatham Mills approached me about a new food service tenant that is very interested in locating in a vacant space in the mill. And those are just a number of kind of existing, kind of residential and corporate citizens that are, attempting to make plans and, further the commerce that is impacted by the situation with the sewer. Other development projects, the Griffin Farms townhomes, the Dale Webb communities, those are also impacted, by what we decide or what the board decides. And then with Chatham Park, certainly Chatham Park has their water recovery center that is providing them relatively short-term treatment capacity. However, from a planning perspective, the force main, enacting the force main is also impacting Chatham Park from a planning perspective. So those are kind of the development side. Other kind of community considerations. I believe I have my years right, but we had usage rate increases in FY 22 and 23 that were not wholly, but maybe substantially related to building revenues for these, large capital projects. So, the nature of those concerns, I think, are generally known by our partners and, external parties. But they, of course, have specific interests for us and a somewhat different, higher degree of accountability for the town. So that's kind of just a review of some of the considerations. So I just, like to pause there to give the board an opportunity to ask any questions or clarify anything that I've covered.
Questions for Kent Jackson?
I'll just say, I think you covered it very well, no questions. But all those things you brought up are very real concerns for the town and for continued delays.
Well, I'll just we have outlined the critical path steps for the approach to move forward with the current bid and the approach to step back and take the longer look to look at all the projects. So staff has, enumerated and identified, those critical steps. So we are, prepared to, to act on either approach to moving forward. I will say that, maybe many of my remarks, may, kind of lean toward feeling like a discussion of moving forward with the bids. However, moving forward with the bids is quickly becoming more difficult than letting them lapse. So,
Anything further?
I think you're right, Ken. And I think it's critical that we continue to engage with all parties about this and make a plan, like you said, for either scenario, because we continue to come up with scenarios where we wait and then it gets more expensive, and then we figure out how to do the last project cost, and then it's more expensive when we try and do it again. And I think that's a continued risk the longer we wait and have unknown price increases, less material available, less contractors available.
right.
All those things. Certainly, we need a solution that works well for the town and for our, future merger with Sanford. But it's not getting any easier as time goes on without any lottery winnings
Yeah.
or things like that.
Sure. And you mentioned the meeting coming up on Thursday.
Mhm.
So that'll be an opportunity to be with City of Sanford staff to discuss this collectively. We, so far have not been able to put together the kind of three-party meeting with the town, Sanford and Chatham Park. However, we have talked with both parties, independent, separately. So.
But the best way to all work together is to all meet together and
Right.
not talk independently. So those
Right.
meetings are critical.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Next, we have a public hearing, and so I would ask the board for a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. And Kent, will you introduce the Town of Pittsboro System Development Fee matter?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So, over the past, we started this in the fall of 2021 and recently concluded an SDF, analysis and update, for the town system development fee. The town originally conducted an analysis and adopted a fee in 2018. And so according to the North Carolina statutes, that analysis has to be updated at least every 5 years. And so on that approaching anniversary, we engaged Freeze and Nichols to perform that analysis. And they provided a draft of that in December and presented that to the board formally in January of this year. On January 24th, 2023, we posted the final draft of the system development fee analysis and report on the town's website and held that open through for public comment through March 9th of 2023. We did receive a few public comments. I think there were 4 total comments, mostly coming in near the end of the comment period. And so tonight, we have Chris Belt and Charles Archer with Freeze and Nichols here. And at the appropriate point of the agenda, they will review the study. And we did discuss with Freeze and Nichols the public comments that we received, at least those comments that had an action related to the analysis, those comments were few. For the most part, the comments were general in nature or more general in nature. So if it pleases the board, I'll ask Chris Belt to come forward and.
Yes, thank you, please.
Presentation. Thank you, board. Thank you, Mayor. So I was going to rehash essentially the same presentation that you already saw on the system development fee analysis and report. So basically going over at a very high level the study that we did, why we did it, and how we got to where we are. So we'll jump right to the next slide for the facts and figures piece. So the system development fee. I'll keep talking while we wait for slides to catch up, but the system development fee is basically a fee that you can charge to developers to cover you for the cost of building the infrastructure to support those developers. So that's the basis of it. The legislature prescribes through North Carolina General, is that better? North Carolina General Statute, Chapter 162, Article 8, how the system development fee is calculated and what you have to do to calculate that fee, how it's done. So First and foremost, it establishes the maximum amount that that fee can be. So everything I'm presenting to you today, that's the maximum amount. That doesn't mean that's the fee that the board will adopt. It's just you can charge anything up to that amount, any amount up to that amount. It also, that statute prescribed that you use from between a 10 and 20-year planning horizon. We looked at the 20-year planning horizon. That planning horizon includes the ETJ, it includes the planned developments that we know about, Chatham Park, Townsend, and others. And then for the areas outside of what we don't know about, we leaned on Community Viz, which is developed in cooperation with the town and other groups. So there's the statute also describes the 3 allowable methods for calculating the system development fee. There's the buy-in method, the incremental method, and then a combination of the 2. So we went with the incremental method because the buy-in method prescribes that they're buying into capacity that you have. The town doesn't have any capacity, so that didn't really apply in this particular situation. As Kent already alluded to, you do have to update it at least every 5 years. There's nothing to say you can't update it much more frequently than that. That's at y'all's discretion. It does require a minimum 25% credit back. So whatever we calculate, there has to be a 25% credit back at a minimum. So we did the ratio analysis, and the 25% is sort of the maximum. So it's by default, it's the minimum that we had to use for this calculation. Only utilized capacity in the infrastructure over that 20-year planning period is allowed to be used in the development fee. So if there's some infrastructure that we build that had excess capacity, but beyond the 20-year planning period, we had to discount that proportionately. And then the final part is how you get to your system development fee, which is the cost per gallon times the gallons per capita day per service unit equivalent. And with that, if we can go to the next slide.
If you're not later, can you talk more specifically about that 25% credit and what that means?
The 25% credit.
Yeah.
So the statute prescribes it. So there's a calculation for how you would look at figuring out what that credit should be or would be. And so the details of how you do that calculation.
Well, I guess more functionally what it means. So that's because we don't have capacity, correct?
No, has nothing to do with the capacity.
Okay.
It would, that 25% minimum credit would apply to any of the types of calculation. It was basically saying you can't collect 100% of the infrastructure costs. You have to give 25% back to pay 20. The developer can't be on the hook for all of it. It's essentially what I think.
But I guess my question is, are we writing a check to the developer for that, or how does that function?
No, it's just not. It's discounted
Not
from
charged.
the system development fee.
Okay.
So I'm sort of going to go over that.
That's good. That's fine too.
In this part.
Thanks.
So what we're looking at now is how we got is the nuts and bolts of that fee. And an important thing to note is that the system development fee is only based on growth infrastructure. So it's not all the parts of the capital improvement plan that are for rehabilitation or non-growth related have to be excluded from the calculation of the system development fee. So this total you see on the board, one for water, one for wastewater, water in blue, the wastewater is in green. When you look at just the growth related CIP projects calculated with all of the capacity proportions that I previously alluded to, you have a total on the water side of $303,899 over the 20-year planning period. So what that comes to is a cost per gallon of $54.66. So when you apply the 25% credit to that amount, that's $13.67. So you deduct the $13.67 from the $54.66, and that's how you get your system development fee cost per gallon of $41. So the planning, the next part of it is coming up with your gallons per capita day. And what the statute requires is that we use the town's planning numbers. And the town's planning numbers are based on the local water supply plan. So the local water supply plan comes up if you look at the numbers there, you get 250 gallons per capita day on an average day. And we build our infrastructure based on the peak day. So you have to look at 2.0 peaking factor. That's your historical peaking factor of average daily flow to your peak flow. So if you multiply 250 gallons per capita day times 2, that's where that 500 gallon per capita day comes from. Then it's as simple as multiplying that 500 times the $41, and you get the $20,500 total maximum system development fee on the water side. You repeat that same process on the wastewater side. The growth capital is substantially lower at $153,576,000. Going, again, the cost per gallon, $69.41. Then you take the 25%, that's $17.35, and you get to $52.05 per gallon. Now, the planning numbers for this are different than the water. This is based on the state's 2T rules, also required that you use the planning numbers. So we use the state 2T rules. So for a single residence, that's 360 gallons per capita day. So you take 360, multiply it by 5205, and you get to the $18,738. Taken together for water and wastewater, the total maximum system development fee that you can allot per service unit is $39,238. And then on the next slide, we'll go a little bit into how the service units equate when you get to larger meters. So a service unit is essentially a single residential meter, which for the town of a service unit, the service unit is the base of 1. The service unit equivalent is then 1, which is the single resident. So in Pittsboro, that's your 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch meter. So if you look at the chart, you see the service unit equivalent of 1. And then you look out to the right, you see that's the system development fee of $39,238. As the meter sizes go up, the flow capacity in those meters is higher. So you have to ratio that to get the service unit equivalent for your larger meters. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you go all the way up to 10 inches. So a 10-inch meter is equivalent to 366.7 residential units. So you just take the 366.7 and multiply it by the 39,238, and you can see it's a staggeringly high, almost $7.2 million. And that concludes the presentation. Be happy to try to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Pell?
One thing, Chris, can you
Yes.
talk about your review of the public comments
Mhm.
and what your impression of those were?
Well, 3 of the 4 commenters in general pretty much alluding to the fact that these are very high system development fees, and I cannot disagree with that. One of them was fine with the high system development fee. One commenter had quite a lot of comments. I'm trying to remember, Kent, was there anything in particular that I haven't touched on that we should cover?
The assumptions.
Right. Do you remember which ones?
Well, I think
I've got some.
talked about the per capita, the usage. That was one of them.
And then one of them also, and this is a question I had too, is so the historic population growth has been, I think, about 4%. And it seems like that was used as projection going forward. I realize it's hard to project when we don't have any utilities, but can you talk about how that future projection was done?
So the projections that we did do are based on the town's planning numbers. So there's been several reports. There's a master plan. CDM did some projections for water and wastewater usage. Hazen and Sawyer did some projections for the water, the population growth, which then translates to water and wastewater demand. So we use those numbers, and then you also look at, for example, Chatham Park. So if you look at Chatham Park, they would say it's like, okay, we're going to try to bring on about 700 residential units, the equivalent of 700 residential units per year. So that would have been accounted for in the population projections as well. So then there were little things, like if you looked at the curve and the capital improvement plan, you would see there's probably the Townsend Center, like when that comes on, it's like it might bump up a little bit because we were told is like, okay, we expect to have the first unit on, I can't remember the year, but a couple years out from now. Of course, nothing will happen until there's water and wastewater to provide it. But then from that point forward, there's a certain percentage of that development that they expect to have done. So working with Kent and the other planners, we would get those numbers, from the developer and plug it in. And there's you can generally say there's about if you look at census data and things like that, there's about 2.3 people per unit, or typically what you assume is a 3-bedroom house. So a 3-bedroom house is going to be like 300. That's where the 360 gallons per capita day is. That's sort of an average.
Yeah. Okay. And those gallons per day, how would a flow reduction affect that for this case?
So now you're getting into a territory where like I would have to probably go back and do some, like I would have to look and run the numbers like what would happen and you're asking like what the required infrastructure would be.
Well, no. So like if a developer or a developer that has a flow reduction, how does that affect their system development fees?
As far as I know, you can't have two separate. I might refer to the town attorney, but you have to have a single system development fee. It's like per meter, so it's all just based on capacity. So it would have to be applied up. To be fair, I think across the board. You gonna step in here, Charles? Thank you.
Per service unit.
To try to answer that question is that these are based upon the calculations that Chris just described. If someone builds a home that has low flow appliances, et cetera, still doesn't change. This is the calculations required for a residential unit, and it's based upon the water supply plan numbers that the town used for its water supply plan.
Yep.
That's what we're required to use. So it comes down back to that same calculation.
Okay.
One other kind of additional clarifying point about the 25%. The way that statute is written, and it's based upon a national model developed by the American Water Works Association, that for incremental method, it's assumed that 25% of the capital costs are built into the rates of the system. So it's paid for by the rate payers, and the remaining up to 75% by the development community that's using the capacity.
Okay.
That
That's
helps.
Explanation. Thank you.
That's better to be sure.
And then let me see what else. Okay, so some of the infrastructure that's listed here, like the water main extension to Flynn Farm or water main extension to Corbett Landing, like I think the developer is going to pay for that. So how does that affect these numbers? And do they pay system development fees if they pay for the infrastructure to their development?
Well, when the CIP was developed, it was presumed the town, that's one of the projects the town is paying for. And that's another reason for the required 5-year update, or at least every 5 years. For example, if you were to get a grant to pay for some of the improvements that are anticipated in this report, you need to recognize that revenue in the next update. So you can't be but so specific because we don't know, we can't predict what revenue streams you might be able to get going forward, whether it's going to be some type of development agreement and that you do to pay for the development. Right now, it's based upon the town was anticipated to pay for these that are listed in here. And then the capacity, as Chris described, that's related to the development that will occur within that 20-year planning horizon. That's how it's calculated.
Okay. So two things on that, I guess. Corbett's Landing, the water line is projected to be $4.3 million. And I think there's going to be 100 homes out there. So the system development fee doesn't cover that or come close, really. So how does that work? And if or when they pay for that water line, do they pay system development fees for water?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No question.
Okay.
Got to get it from somewhere.
Good. And then I think this is true, but if we were to charge, say we made up 50% of the system development fee that we were going to charge for a 3/4 inch meter or one service unit, do we have to charge that same 50% for a 6-inch meter? Or can we adjust per?
It has to be the same equivalent for that equivalent unit that Chris described.
Mhm.
Whatever that rate is, has to be universally applied, would be my answer to that. So you're not giving preferential treatment to one class versus another class of user.
So when discount applied to each meter size.
Yes, if you wanted to set something less, it needs to be applied universally.
Because it's all based on the service unit equivalent. So if one is the 3/4 or 1-inch meter, everything else is bigger, so therefore the fee would be bigger.
That makes sense to me. I thought I heard differently in a previous
Thought we did too.
presentation.
We
But-
did.
Maybe that's not the case.
So-
Or I guess that's not the case. And then on the service unit, service area map, like it doesn't show the county complex, the county jail out there, like we serve them. So how do outliers like that fit in to this?
Well, we started with what town staff provided as far as the service area to be served and the projects that were identified looking at the town's water model as an example of where additional water supply might be needed for future growth. But again, if there's something that's missing, again, that needs to be captured in an update.
This is existing, I guess.
I think in that case, it would have already been
Just,
accounted for.
yeah, it's already accounted for. It's not for future growth. This is looking forward, not looking back.
Agreed. I guess I was just curious about
Yeah.
the service area includes that.
Right, it includes the town's planning jurisdiction.
Okay. I'll keep going. Okay. Yeah, I guess the last question for staff really is some of these comments are about other jurisdictions, system development fees, which are related to the costs that they have, not the cost that we have. So I understand that, but I also recognize for multiple factors that we can't be grossly disproportionate with the communities around us, or no one will build here still or anymore. So what would staff's advice be on how to set a number with that in mind? I mean, we have the data from the system from this study that includes a particular amount of projects. If we set it at 30,000, say there's things that we can't do in that study. And if we set it at 5,000, there's more things we can't do. Is that correct? Or
I'll answer in this way. I think staff anticipates that, it may be desirable to have some type of work session prior to your next meeting, or prior to the further consideration of the fee. I think we have some general information in response to your question, but I think we'd like to analyze that, review that a bit more before providing information to guide your decision on that. So
that's fair. I think that's reasonable. I mean, I think it's unlikely we'll do the maximum, but I don't know how we determine a different number.
Sure.
Essentially.
Any other questions? We have one speaker signed up for this public hearing, and that is Tim Smith. Mr. Smith, if you'd come forward.
Board, Mr. Mayor, Tim Smith, representing Chatham Park. My address 105 Western State Way in Cary. Just a brief statement at the beginning here. I think new development should pay its way and pay for all these improvements on this chart as they have outlined them. I just have a couple questions on the amounts that they've got on usage of the water and the sewer. Currently, the town average house is using 102 gallons of water a day. And of course, they've got on their chart 500 gallons a day. So based on what the usage is and what the amount that the chart was required by the state, engineers did for the state, 500, that's 5 times what the current household is using. So to penalize the home builder for using 500 gallons when he's only going to use 102, to me, that's 5 times more than what's necessary. That's on page 42. If you go to page 42, it shows the chart. The average per capita use of water is 44 gallons a day times 2.33 people per dwelling unit comes out to 102 gallons a day. So I think when you end up setting the fee, it should be considered more in line with what's being used as opposed to what the state has outlined. And of course, these are ones on the chart here from engineers are the maximum fees, not the minimum fees. And they're not, you can allocate it to gallons. Right now, your current system development fees are per gallon, not per meter size. So that would be a new way to calculate it. In Chatham Park, we have a reduction from 360 gallons a day to 180 gallons a day per 3-bedroom house. This chart and these engineers did not take that in consideration. So, and the town has a flow reduction for every new home built in the town to 65 gallons per bedroom. So they have a flow reduction down to 205 gallons. So any new house is considerably less than the 360 gallons, which is shown here. So Chatham Park should not be penalized for 360 gallon times 52 gallons. It should be half of that amount. So right now we discussed that with Kennedy and the last town manager, and that's why it was done per gallon instead of per meter charge. So I think it would be wrong to set it at 360 when everything in Chatham Park is 180 and everything else coming into town is 205 gallons. So I think that's a mistake. But here again, these are the maximums. This is the way the state said to do it. But I think you got to make a accommodation. So is that correct? Are my statements correct?
I didn't hear anything that was inaccurate. I will add your comment about the townwide flow reduction was the result of a request for Northwood Landing that the town supported for the residential units there. The state instead issued the approval you mentioned that would cover any residential use in town.
Correct.
That's how that came together. It was not a specific request of the town for the flow reduction townwide for residential. It was just issued by the state, inconsistent with what was requested somewhat.
Correct. So I would just request that the engineers rework their sewer numbers based on what the state has now granted to the town and Chatham Park. So the town is at 205 gallons and the Chatham Park is and has been for the last 5 years at 180 gallons. So I don't think a new builder should be penalized to pay double. I complain about the amount per gallon. I'm just saying the gallons are way overestimated in this chart. So that's what I'm saying. Ma'am?
That's your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else to come before the board on this matter? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this point.
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin,
Seconded.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Following the public hearing, our old business can Kent, we're back with you on the adoption of the ordinance and schedule public hearing for March 27th.
Thank you, Mayor. So in your packets, there were drafts of two ordinances. The first relates to adopting the study completed by Freeze and Nichols that you just heard a overview of that information. And the second ordinance will be the ordinance for the actual adoption of the updated system development fee. Staff is recommending to decouple those. Certainly, it's appropriate this evening to consider the adoption of the ordinance for accepting the analysis from Freeze and Nichols, and the other action that would be in order would be to set a public hearing to consider the adoption of a new system development fee on your next meeting on March 27th.
So is there a motion to adopt the Freeze and Nichols study?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp,
Seconded.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Certainly.
I just have one question,
Please.
if I could, please. Mr. Jackson, you had suggested a work session. Now, were you suggesting a work session regarding this system development fee?
Yes, that was my thought, was that we might have a work session prior to the regular meeting when you consider the adoption of the fee, to allow staff to provide additional information and maybe address some of the questions or points that were raised tonight.
Okay,
Yes.
but adopting this ordinance would be, we could do that now, if desired, and then have the discussion or work session regarding a more
Right.
in-depth
You-
analysis.
Yes, you could adopt the ordinance for the free study now and then consider the other one at your next meeting.
Thank you very much.
So this is not setting the fees yet.
Yes.
We're accepting the study.
And I will, we intend to do two, or is this for two motions?
Let's
Um,
do.
Do two? Okay, so the first motion was to adopt the Freeze and Nichols study. The motion was by Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And next then, bifurcating this, we would adopt a public hearing prior to our next meeting, a work session prior to our next meeting, March 27th, at which time we'd have a public hearing on the actual fee structure.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those, motion carries unanimously. All right. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Eeks is with us next on the hybrid and flexible work policy. And under new business. Thank you, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you. So I'm bringing before you tonight the hybrid and flexible work policy. Since the pandemic, a lot of one department in particular have been working from home. They like that idea. They want to keep doing that. However, we did not have a policy that addressed the parameters of such. So I developed this policy, but it is also more encompassing because it also offers the opportunity for remote work, compressed schedule, and alternative work schedules. Some departments can't work from home due to the nature of their job. So this kind of allows more departments to, offer that option to kind of help retain recruitment and retain the employees that we have, and just offer them a better work-life balance. So I'll answer any questions you have.
Questions for Jennifer?
I don't have any questions, and I do like the policy.
Yes, ma'am.
However, I would prefer if, before we adopt this policy, that the permanent town manager be in place so that he can actually, or she can actually review that proposed policy.
So, well, I mean, the practice has been continuing anyway. Essentially, this policy is in place to protect the town and also the employees, because we do have to continue to provide workers' comp, stuff like that, even though the employee is working from home or something like that. So it kind of encompasses all of that. So,
And the new manager could bring this back with revisions or edits or changes
he could.
to your concern.
And so that's the thing with the policies. They can be changed at any time. So if you want to adopt it now, and if it needs to be changed later, we can, or if you want to just wait.
I think the issue with that is this has been an ongoing practice, at least since the pandemic, and then the interim town manager suspended that policy. So right now, our employees are not able to work in the way that they have been working.
Correct.
Until we pass this. So I agree it would be preferable to do it once with a new town manager, but I think that it's really important to allow this again for our employees that they were, have been able to do for the last few years.
I was unaware that was suspended.
Mhm.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I do, Jennifer, I appreciate you including the compressed and alternative schedules too. That's been a favorite of mine. I think it's a great way to include, other departments in a policy.
It is. And specifically, our Public Works Department had asked for that as well.
Mhm.
So they are wanting something like this. So it does aid in recruitment and retention, because this type of work environment is here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. So a lot of people are looking for that nowadays to help balance that work and their private life. So
Definitely. I was going to say the February issue of the City County Management Association magazine is actually all about new work. And they had an article specifically about attracting and retaining employees. And one of the things they said is flexibility is no longer a perk, it's expected.
Right.
And they clearly made a distinction too between working from home and calling it flexible and remote work, and that it's, could be from anywhere, could be from Canada, for example.
Right.
As the interim manager is doing this evening. So I did have two changes I wanted to suggest to this. In F5, it says that they may suspend or discontinue the hybrid or flexible work arrangement at any time. I would like to change that to with a reasonable notice and just leave reasonable up, because people plan their lives around these type of arrangements. So I think it's critical that we provide some type of reasonable notice if that's going to be suspended for an employee or a department or things like that. And then also on the approval form, right now it requires signatures by the employee, their supervisor, the department director, the human resources department, and the town manager. And we can change that to just their immediate supervisor.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I want to add one thing, but as I said, I am for this policy.
Yes, ma'am.
When you say a reasonable notice, I think you need to specify a time, 2 days, 3 days, or something.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
I mean, I would say,
30
I
days.
think when he suspended it this time, it was 2 weeks. I think 30 days is probably more appropriate for people to rearrange their lives.
Yeah.
You've heard the suggested amendments to
Jennifer,
the policy.
what department is mainly working from home now?
Planning.
Okay.
And just to say that there has not been any issues with anybody's work. So it's just that all other municipalities, most of them do have a policy in place. And again, to safeguard the town and the employee as well. So even though it has been going on as practice, for a while now since the pandemic, it was just wise to go ahead and incorporate this policy. So.
With respect to the vote on the flexible and hybrid policy, with those two amendments, which would be approval by the direct supervisor to the employee and a 30-day reasonable notice to suspend. Is there a motion to accept the work policy as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp,
Seconded.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Teresa Thompson. I believe we're going to talk about some Chatham rabbits.
Yes, thank you. And good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. The third annual Found It Rabbit Hunt is scheduled for Saturday, April the 8th. And Welcome Chatham is co-hosting this event this year for the first time with the Pittsboro Gallery of Arts. They are requesting the town to be a sponsor of the event by covering the cost of the face painter, which would be $200. That would help be able to advertise the event as a free event to cover the costs. And I can answer any questions you have. I think we also have Greg Lewis on the Zoom call if you have any questions for them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions by the board?
Yes, I see they're intending to sell raffle tickets for this. Is this a fundraiser and for who?
I think that would probably be a question for the organization.
Okay.
Greg or Maria, are you?
I'm here.
Great.
Hey, Greg.
Hello, everyone. So the raffle tickets are just a way to recoup our funds of spending of the paying for the rabbits. The vouchers. So the way this works is the visitors come into town, they get their picture taken with the rabbits, they bring it to the Welcome Center, they're given a $10 voucher that they can use in any of the participating stores in downtown Pittsboro. Welcome Chatham will then reimburse the stores that $10. So the only raffle tickets that are being sold is just to kind of cover our cost. It will not cover our total cost.
Okay, so it's a fixed amount for, it's a fixed amount of tickets for the event to cover the cost, you're saying?
They're excuse me, just 1 minute. No, there isn't. The whole event is costing us $500, not counting the face painting.
Is that it, Greg?
I mean, the event is free for people to come into downtown. This is the third annual event that we've done. We are, we were asked if we were interested in hosting the event. Main Street had done it the first 2 years. PDAB asked if we would take it on this year, so we agreed to take it on this year. We have never done face painting as part of this event. It's always been the rabbit hunt and the storybook walk. So there's a storybook walk as families can go through town. There's pages of a book posted in different windows throughout town. And then PDAB came up with the idea of doing the face painting in the pocket park. And that's where this fee is coming from, this additional fee is coming from. The entire thing was not in Chatham Welcome's or Welcome Chatham's budget to begin with. And so we're taking this on as an additional expense to us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I would make a motion to approve, just subject to Mr. Misc and Ms. Meacham sign off that we have everything we need from Welcome Chatham.
Okay. You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Thank you.
Is the board in, at this point, ready to take a motion to go into closed session? The first item for closed session.
Mayor, can I just ask Mr. Jackson one question?
Certainly.
I was going back through this, water system. He's gone. Okay. All right, I'll get it when late. Thank you.
The
I
first,
guess I could just bring it up though, since I,
okay, yeah.
yeah, going back through this, we, they got these numerous projects and all like this, but we have discussed the Bynum water line for years, and it did not even make the list here on this, the development fee eligible products, and we have been discussing this for years, as I have been discussing the old Golston Road and Austin Chapel to Toonberry, is it Toonberry? Down through there, that's been on the radar for 11 years, I know of.
Yeah.
And it just gets thrown to the side, and it's back here at the bottom of the list, but I think we need to go back and when we get into this and update some of these projects with people that are paying double rates and buying them and can't even use the water.
Yeah. Commissioner Farrell, I very much appreciate your raising this issue. And I was thinking the same thing about those 2-inch lines that go up the hill there near the drinking water plant. And wondered, is that truly would that be a maintenance or repair issue? Or would that be an extension of new service? Because by the time you go laying a larger diameter pipe to replace those, you're going to be able to open up some infill development in that neighborhood. And so I had similar questions. I decided not to raise these questions because I kind of figure that it gets worked out in the wash in the bigger SDF study, given that there's such a vast array of acreage that is in the SDF that is likely to never be developed. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that because none of us have a crystal ball, but there's some places that are on that map indicated for development. For example, I think the park next to the river was under this, what's it called? System Viz or what was something Viz, Community Viz. So I very much appreciate your point. I do have questions about what would be considered rehabilitation or replacement versus infill development, making infill development possible, because that's new lines in my mind. But thank you.
But I do, regarding the Bynum, I know we had some issues with some easements and property lines, but
Very complicated.
we need to stay on track with that issue.
Yes, thank you.
All right, perhaps that would be something we would like to include in next week, in the next
Yes.
agenda. So at the work session, yeah. Good.
Thank you.
We have two sections of closed sessions tonight. One under North Carolina GS 143, 31811A19, and one under 143, 31811A3. Is there a motion to go into closed session for these two purposes?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. from our closed session. We are now in open session. And I would take a motion with respect to the recessing of tonight's meeting to reconvene tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at Town Hall. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Bonitz,
Seconded.
Mr. Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And I believe that that recess puts us closed for the night. Yes, we're out. Thank you so much.
And
I think that's us and us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.